Hello, and welcome to Vancouver's CRE Market Channel. In this channel, we do a deep dive into Vancouver's commercial and residential real estate market, leveraging data science and advanced analytical tools to gain actionable insight into the market. My name is Esan, and I help buyers and sellers like you to gain insights and to feel confident navigating the real estate market. If you're thinking of getting into the market and find this method useful to you, please feel free to shoot me an email to eson@vancouvercremarket.com. In this episode, we're going to look at some of the real estate specific policies and some general external forces that would affect our economy, and we're going to look at how those would affect the real estate market in 2025. Now, this is by no means a prediction of what the price is going to be in 2025. There's a famous quote attributed to Neil Bohr that says, prediction is difficult, especially when it's about the future. So just understanding what has happened and what's happening is hard enough that we cannot really, with any margin of certainty, predict the future. And if I could, I wouldn't be recording this video. But we're going to look at some of these forces and the mechanics of how these forces could affect the real estate market. So here are the key policies and external forces that could affect the real estate market in 2025. Let's go through them one by one. The first one is BC's new home flipping tax policy. Well, this policy is a new policy that came into effect on January 1st, 2025. The stated goal of this policy is to reduce the number of home flippers and create a stable pricing environment for real estate in BC. And although it has good intentions behind it, I do not think it's going to be effective at all, because in this real estate market, it's really hard to make a buck flipping a house anyway. So if you were to purchase a property, you have to pay for your property transfer tax and all the acquisition cost that comes with it. And then once you add value to it and you want to sell it, then you have to pay all the disposition costs, like the commission, all these extra costs in a short period of time. It's really hard to make up for them from the profit proceeds in this market environment with almost stagnant market condition we have had for the past few years. So I really don't see the reason why we are having this conversation to begin with. So I do not think this policy has any effect on its own. So let's move on to the second policy now. So the second policy we're going to look at is the mass expiration of temporary work visas. Now, I've watched a lot of my colleagues' videos on 2025 real estate prediction, and no one is mentioning this extremely significant policy. Basically, the federal government has decided that all the temporary visa workers or temporary work visas will going to expire by the end of 2025, and basically they have to leave the country. They wouldn't be able to support themselves if they can't find a job for themselves. So imagine 4.9 million people leaving the country in a country of 40 million people. So that's about 12% of the population. That's no joke. And that means a lot of the homes, including a lot of those investor apartment units that were built for the population, will vacate, and they'll come back to market, either the rental market or the resale market. And it will affect both markets pretty drastically. So if all these people have to leave the country and end up leaving the country, we are going to have a big problem on our hands in real estate, both the rental rates and the resale rates will be affected dramatically, especially those smaller units or those units that were in downtown core areas of Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, housing these people. So the effect of this policy on the real estate market would be to decrease demand significantly and meaningfully to the degree that it would affect the prices, and it would affect the number of sales. The next policy we're going to look at is the federal government's new 30-year amortization policy that came into effect on December 15th. Obviously, this policy is meant to increase the demand for certain properties. It will have an impact on the real estate market. It will help a few people get into the market and purchase what they couldn't afford under the 25-year amortization policy. So this stimulates the demand side of the equation. Also, the other policy with federal government's new mortgage insurance policy. So that's for purchase price of up to 1.5 million. You only pay 5% on the first 500,000 and 10% on the balance. So again, this policy is meant to stimulate the demand side of the equation, and therefore it's meant to support the real estate market prices in this very challenging time for the real estate market. The other important news we're going to follow is Trudeau's resignation and the upcoming federal election. We're probably going to see the election sometimes in spring or early summer 2025. The new government, whether it's a liberal government or a conservative government, will have to deal with the immigration policies and a lot of challenges ahead, including dealing with Trump's administration. My personal sense is it's going to bring some certainty into the decision making and the economic direction of the country, and as such, it would be positive once it unfolds, but obviously we're ways away from that. So we'll have to see what's going to happen in the meantime. Okay, and the final event that we're going to look at is the new 25% tariff on the Canadian goods. This is arguably the most impactful event that can happen and affect the Canadian economy and by extension the Canadian real estate market. So a lot of the economists have weighed in on the 25% tariffs, and the verdict is that majority of the economists, including the TD economists, they are predicting 2.5% to 3% GDP negative growth. That would translate to about $2,000 per person for every Canadian per year. So this is going to be a very difficult couple of years if the tariffs are implemented, and it is going to complicate a lot of things, including it's going to increase the unemployment rate. The forecast that I've seen is from 6.8 that we're at right now to 7.9%, with some markets like the Ontario market up to 9% unemployment rate, which is unbelievably high for Canada. And so this would affect the interest rate. They're also saying that even though the unemployment rate would go up, this will not mean that the Bank of Canada will have to drop the rates. In fact, this would increase the inflationary forces, and the Bank of Canada's primary job is to put inflation at a certain level. So in other words, the Bank of Canada, faced with an economy that's stagnating, they would go with the inflation forces and try to bring that into check. So this means that we will have both high unemployment rate and high interest rate. And so that is a recipe for a lot of challenges in the real estate market, unfortunately. And so we'll have to see. We'll have to see if the full 25% will apply to all Canadian goods, or would some sectors, like the energy sector, would find exemptions. If they're going to reduce that tariff to 10% or get so we'll have to see how everything will unfold. Will this mean that the new 25% tariff would eliminate some some better jobs out there, and then the 4.9 million temporary visa holders would leave the country, and then a lot of jobs that regular Canadians are not willing to fill in those jobs fully would be vacant as well. In that case, we're going to have an extremely high unemployment rate. Certain jobs, people usually are not keen to apply for those jobs, and that's why we get the temporary work visas to do them. And then certain other jobs that Canadians love to do them, would be affected by the 25% tariff. So this would mean an extremely high unemployment rate. So hopefully our government can diffuse the situation with the U.S. administration, but if not, then we're going to head into a couple of years of high unemployment rate, possibly high inflation rate, and we're going to have to see if we can survive under these conditions, or the real estate market will have to take in a considerable blow in terms of the price drops and certain activities in the market. But for the time being, let's just hope for the best. So how would the 25% tariff affect the construction industry? Well, last time there was a dispute over softwood lumber that increased the price of lumber in Canada. And the reason why is that the extra costs and expenses will always be passed down to the consumers. And in this case, because the consumers are people buying lumber from these companies, they will have to pay more for the lumber they're going to get. So, in other words, this would have an effect on the consumer prices at the lumber yard. And also that means that the construction costs for the material will go up. Now, add to it the temporary work visas that will expire in 2025, and a significant portion of those people work in the construction industry, along with the agricultural industry, fast food industry, and such. So the prices for labor will go up in those industries as well. And the two together would mean that higher construction costs across the board, across Canada, and with the performance not being very strong at this point, having to deal with added construction costs, both on the material and labor, is going to make it very, very difficult for projects to survive this climate. So then, which product type will be affected by these different economic forces come into play, including the 25% tariff and the large exodus of 4.9 million people leaving Canada in 2025. Whenever there is an economic fluctuation like the 25% tariff, the higher the mortgage amount, the more susceptible people are to the fluctuating rates. So the luxury market is definitely a market to watch for. It is a market that's going to be most affected by the fluctuating economic conditions, followed by regular single families. Also, with 4.9 million people leaving Canada in 2025 and 0% population growth in 2025, apartments will have a hard time meeting the supply in the absence of the demand. So The apartment market will find it hard to move units in this economic condition and environment. And it would come down to townhomes and multiplexes. What we just discussed was the worst case scenario. But what if the Canadian government can resolve the situation with the US administration and the tariff doesn't apply to Canada, and Canada is able to ride this wave? In that case, we will definitely have a much brighter future ahead of us. Simply because the US first policy that Trump has been campaigning on means US needs to bring in a lot of manufacturing jobs, and that would mean they would need a lot more raw materials and energy. And so Canada would be their first and best supplier, the closest supplier to the raw material and to the energy that they require to bring in the manufacturing jobs. So if you're able to navigate this time, we will have a quick recovery in terms of the economic recovery of our country, and also the real estate market will start to see brighter days. So again, it's very difficult to forecast or to foresee the future, but we could see how different factors come into play and the mechanics by which the economic situation would change, and the changes it would have on the real estate market as well. So let's hope for the best moving on to 2025.